take us away and get us started. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is RCEA Board Clerk Lori Tequeta. Here's today's housekeeping announcements. Here at the Wharfinger Building, the microphones will be on throughout the meeting. So please speak clearly, one person at a time, and say your name when you start talking so the online and phone participants can follow the discussion easily. No community members in attendance, but the podium is here if you want to participate, or if you are online. Please click the raise hand button in the webinar controls. Phone participants press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute, and raise your hand early so we don't miss you when public comment period comes around. Your comment may be limited to 3 minutes at the chair's discretion. Email public comments are being accepted at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org until the chair closes the public comment period for that agenda item. If you're participating remotely and your meeting connection is disrupted, please notify us if possible by calling or texting 707-613-0622. Same number as you see on the screen right now, or by emailing publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org.
Thank you. All right, so we will call the January 23rd, 2025 meeting of this Board of Directors to order. I'd like to welcome Michael Durace, who is our new representative here, director for the Yurok tribe, and we will have a roll call, please.
Okay, Director Arroyo.
Here.
Director Bauer is absent, and so is alternate Director Contreras Deloach. Director Garachi.
Here.
Director Jorgensen.
Here.
Director Mobley is absent today. Director Ramos.
Here.
Director Scafani. Here. Chair Schaefer.
Here.
Director Tuttle.
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Wu.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Lori. And we have no members participating remotely today, so that will take us to item 2.1, which is election of officers and community advisory committee liaisons. So do we have a staff report on this? Can we just jump right in? All right. I talked to current Vice Chair Bauer, and he is interested in serving as chair, even though he's not here today. So I'll probably, I guess, end up chairing the rest of this meeting, but I know he's interested. And also, though she is not here, I was hoping to nominate Chris Mobley as vice chair, but no. And I didn't know she wasn't going to be here until like right before this meeting when I saw my emails, so I didn't have a chance to contact her. I don't know. I don't know if anybody else has talked to her, if she's expressed any reason why she wouldn't want that, but she's been very involved as our RCEA liaison, and I think she's really up to speed and would do a great job. So those are my two people.
Who do we have for the community rep?
Yes. And we nominated. Yeah. Yes, I did show up, yeah. All right, so do people feel okay about that? Do we have any more discussion about our chair and vice chair? Does anybody want to throw any names out there?
So the nomination was for Scott Bauer for chair and Chris Mobley for vice chair.
Yes.
But nobody has heard of whether Chris is interested.
Yeah.
It is a minimal commitment.
Do we want to have a backup vice chair in case Chris says she does not want to do it? Could the motion include a secondary?
I don't know why not. Okay, sure. Is there anybody that is interested in serving as vice chair?
I'll do that if she says no.
Okay.
She'll say yes.
Really, she's done a lot of, putting a lot of work to understand everything, and she was very involved too with the ED recruitment and all that, so.
Yeah.
I think she'll want to.
I think it's very low risk for you to say that.
Okay. So we have then the nomination of Scott Bauer as chair and Chris Mobley as vice chair with the alternate of Sherry Wu if declined.
So moved. I like that you're going to be the alternate to the alternate. Thank you.
So we
Like I
have,
said, it's a low risk.
so we have a motion from Director Royo. Do we have a second? I'll second. Okay, we have a second from Director Stefani. Should we vote on that and then we'll come back to CAC? Is that fine for order? Okay. So, we can do a show of hands because we're all here in person, so all in favor, aye. Okay, sorry, I couldn't see you there, Frank, so that is unanimous on that, thank you, folks. And then we need a liaison and an alternate liaison if desired to the Community Advisory Committee. Again, if you are newish to this board, I recommend it, it definitely helps me get up to speed. I know it is a commitment because those meetings can be long, but they're a great group and I learned a lot when I did that a couple of years ago. So is there anybody that is interested in being the liaison to the CAC?
And for reference, it's every other month, 6 to 7:30 PM on a Tuesday.
Which Tuesday?
The second Tuesday of the month, every other month. So we met in January, so we won't meet again until March.
And the meetings are in Eureka, right at 10%? Yeah.
We have our council meetings on Tuesdays.
So does your year.
Same.
Yeah, and we won't always have one on the second Tuesday, but.
Okay, well, I'm happy to do it. I think I can do it. Tuesdays are usually a pretty good day for me, so. But we gotta have an alternate just in case.
I'll be an alternate. I'm currently the alternate and I've gone to one community advisory committee meeting. Where I, just stirred the pot a little bit accidentally while I was there. But happy to continue as the alternate. I will say if our board meetings ever go on the longer side, the risk is that I would not be available as the alternate, but it would have to be a 9 to 7 PM meeting for me to miss, so.
Let's hope we don't have any of those, but
It's
also
not
even
good.
if you have a 9 to something meeting, you probably won't wanna go after too. Okay, so then, yes, I'm happy to nominate myself and Natalie as the alternate. If there is somebody that would like to move that.
So moved.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Seconded. All right, all in favor of that one? Aye. Oh, yes. All right. Is there public comment on this? On Zoom. Nothing online. All right, then we will do our last vote of 2.1 here. All in favor, aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, folks. And that'll take us to item 2.2, which is committee assignments. So we're going to determine whether our standing finance committee should continue its work, which I do believe it is requested that we do. And then appoint up to 5 directors to serve on that committee for 1-year terms. And so I know that Scott is the current chair of that committee. So you should continue on and then we can fill it up with other folks who's interested. Okay, and Skip, I think Skip, you are currently on it as well. I know I'm currently on it. Okay, Jason is interested. I would be happy to continue on as well. So that's 4 and we can have up to 5.
That was it. So,
Okay.
Just finance me.
Yes, finance
I
me.
wanted.
Okay, and Frank. Is there anybody else that's interested? Because I would take a step back because I've done it for 2 years, but. Okay, so we have Jason, Frank, myself, Skip, and Scott.
Do you want to step off it?
Kind of.
You have a lot on your
I mean,
plate.
it's really only probably about like 1 to 2 meetings a year, so it's not the end of the world, but.
So we have a meeting February 6th.
Yes.
For the mid-year budget review, and then we'll meet in May for the preparing of the next fiscal year.
Then you meet in person?
Because it's a standing, it has to follow the Brown Act.
Right.
So this is a notice meeting where public can attend, and yes, we do in person.
I'll do that.
Okay, there we go, cool, I'll step back then, great. So yes, Jason, Michael, Frank, Skip, and Scott. All right. Anybody to move for that? So move, second, and seconded. All in favor, aye? And that carried, yes, it's a separate item, it is a separate item, okay, do we have any public comment? I don't see any. Nothing on Zoom, all right, all in favor? There we go, unanimous. Okay, so that'll take us to. Whoa, I'm 3. Any reports? I don't know what's happening. Oh, you ought to report something.
I'll go just to save you. Is that okay? So I've been in communication with, some colleagues on the Central Coast about the Moss Landing battery plant fire. And I'm a, co-chair of a coastal counties, policy group with the California State Association of Counties. So it's comprised of county supervisors from the different coastal counties who get together to talk about related matters. A lot of times it's legislation related to the Coastal Act or, the Coastal Commission, but there's lots of other topics that come up as well, dredging and others. So we are gonna likely have a special session to talk about that, and kind of some of this, they're thinking there, the community's having a lot of concerns about it and wants to talk about it there, so they're gonna like reflect out what they've heard, any lessons learned, anything that really other coastal counties can benefit from. So if there's anything useful there, I'll happily report it back. I think, it's not gonna be with the general public, it'll be amongst the county supervisors to kind of share lessons learned. So I'm happy to share anything for that. And then I am personally hoping to take a trip to Lake County to check out some of the geothermal projects there. And so putting that out there that I'm interested in doing that, kind of making just a short trip of it, but maybe one overnight. And taking a more robust tour of some of those facilities. I don't know if anyone else has done that or has interest in doing that. I just wanted to put out there that I'm gonna use a little bit of my county travel funds to do that. But if anyone else would like to tag along, supporting us, happy to do so.
Thank you, Adam. Anybody else, any other reports? Not seeing any, we will move to oral written communications. This is a time to address the board on matters not on the agenda. And at the end of public comment, the board may respond to statements. Do we have any public comment? Not seeing anybody in person. Is there anybody on Zoom? Okay, nothing on Zoom. And sorry, folks, I'm just like having allergies today, and so it's like I'm not sick. It's just my throat has been rather tickly. All right, so item 5, that takes us to the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine by the board and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion, and if discussion is required, this item can be removed from consent and considered separately. At the end of the reading of the consent calendar, the board members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for discussion. So item 5.1, approve the minutes of December 17th, 2024 board special meeting. Item 5.2, approve disbursements reports. Item 5.3, accept financial reports. Item 5.4, approve the 2025 RCEA Board of Directors calendar. Item 5.5, approve the updated and unchanged community choice energy weighted board vote distribution. Item 5.6, reappoint Deborah Dweeks, Richard Johnson, Luna Latimer, and Kit Mann to the Community Advisory Committee for terms ending March 31st, 2027. Item 5.7, approve amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with the Sierra Business Council in the amount of $413,628.59 for rural Red North startup services and authorize the executive director to execute all of the 4 documents. Item 5.8, approve engagement with Baker Tilly US LLP for audit of Road Coast Energy Authority financial statements for the years ended June 30th, 2024 to 2026, and authorize the executive director to execute all of the 4 documents. And item 5.9, approve the memorandum of understanding and the ground lease to install, operate, and maintain electric vehicle supply equipment at Carlson Park between RCEA and the city of Arcata, and authorize the executive director to execute all of the 4 documents. Do we have any board members that would like to remove an item?
We pulled 5.5 just for a little bit of discussion and clarification.
Yes. Okay. So we're gonna pull item 5.5. Are there any members of the public that would like to pull items from consent? Not seeing anyone in person. Is there anyone on Zoom? All right. So I will take a motion for 5.1 through 5.4 and 5.6 through 5.9.
I mean that.
Okay. Moved by Director Blue, do we have a second? Second by Director Jorgensen, all in favor, aye. Aye.
Aye.
And any abstained? Okay, so. You get that one? Perfect. All right, so that will take us to 5.5. Approve the updated and unchanged community choice energy weighted board vote distribution. Questions, comments, concerns?
Want me to stay away and hold it?
Yes.
Okay. I had heard some rumblings in the community, not from members of our board, but, that there was, I think dissatisfaction with the, tribes not having votes on this board. And so I wanted to kind of take the opportunity to, articulate why this legal structure exists and kind of see, and maybe this is a topic for another time to dig into how we can kind of have our tribal partners have a greater voice in the decision making, even if the JPA spells out one approach. You know, what that might look like in the future, so, I don't want to put you both on the spot, but if you have concerns about it, happy to hear them too. This came from, again, some folks not in this room, so I just wanted to, help clarify.
Thank you, Natalie.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, so it's only the CCE items, and it's a CPC requirement for the, for a CCA. And so the same as the water district. I will say, we've strived to bring everything that has, that touches RCA as a whole back to the full board and not have it on CCE only business. So for example, we may have a discussion item on a solicitation, that CCE business, which the non-CCE voting parties wouldn't vote on. But when we bring back the contract, because that, you know, affects all of RCA, we have everyone vote on that. So I'm glad you brought it up for discussion, and we have over the years tried to ensure that we're trying to get every voice heard in when we're voting.
And like, what are the exact parameters for something to be CC business? I mean, basically just like contracts and purchasing of energy, or?
It's decisions that influence the CCA program. So setting the procurement goals, the CCE specific policies, things like that. And, you know, I have to say the line is a little blurred sometimes, and I have to ask Nancy sometimes of like, do you determine this to be CCE business or general RCA business?
Yeah.
Yeah, as the non-voting member for many years, I've always felt like I could definitely contribute to the discussion and, you know, do the homework and say my piece and all that stuff. And there's only been maybe not even a handful, because I can't even think of specifically which the times when I really wanted to vote and I couldn't. You know, there's only, I mean, there would be times I forget that I didn't. Because I'm so into it, but you know, that's just. So while I understand how on the surface it looks like, well, how come the tribe can't vote? That's not fair. You know, that on the surface, that seems completely reasonable. But like you're saying, there's some almost structural reasons why we can't.
Go ahead, Frank.
My understanding was that, and I saw it in the calculation when they reestablished, or confirming it was around and who had how much of a weighted vote, was that you had to be an entity that was basically selling the PG unit that had something to do with the power structure, how that worked with that. Is Nancy's not here anymore?
No.
But I'm not trying to attack the Native American tribe. I'm trying to say that I thought that was part of it, because each of the cities in the county have customers, and I don't know how that applies to the sovereign nations. So that's, but I think that was my understanding of why, like, Sherry couldn't be, because the water district really wasn't an entity that was given the power, and I don't know where we tie into PG&E with that as far as entities. It's a good question. It probably needs to go to at least have legal counsel there, but if there's no reason to proceed with it, then I don't know why they shouldn't be on, to be honest.
And maybe it's a bigger question for the CPUC, and then, you know, if there's more clarity down the line, we could amend the JPA, like, I'll just say I'm open to that, I mean, I do feel a little, you know, odd about the weighting structure, but I'm striving to be a good board member, but, you know, it's like, oh, I sit here and get 39 votes, and, you know, some people get 5, and it's like, you know, it's definitely a lot of, onus and responsibility, but also like, you know, I just want to make sure we're sharing it as equitably as possible, and I appreciate the staff working to put as many things on non-CCU businesses as possible. Yeah. Thanks for.
And I've always, the way that it was presented to us, and I've had discussions with other people, when Matthew came down, and he came down twice to Redwood and made this pitch, because at first they wanted all the cities to obviously become part of JPA. When this was being put together. And one of the reasons I voted no on it, because there was this weighted deal. You know, he didn't go into the explanation of how this weighted thing really was gonna work. But the county has a pretty big say. You know, they're not here for the meeting, you better hope you reach everybody else here, or it's not gonna happen. And two, if they don't go along with it, you better hope it's unanimous with the rest of them, because it's probably not gonna happen. And so that didn't seem to me as a right procedure. You know, to have, nothing else that I'm involved in really has this weighted vote to. And so if you're an entity, you get one vote. And that's how we do with the rest of the RCEA stuff, it's one vote is one vote. And it is what it is. Your boy, it was a controversial whether that was the object of the controversy when this thing was formed. I didn't attend it. I don't know that, but we voted it, the city council really voted to be a part of it. And so somebody else went down and sat through all of the meetings, and eventually left, and I became that. Whatever you call it, representative. So I would like to see this at least go back to Nancy and let her give us some input, make it an agenda item. All of them. Yeah, I'm fine with everybody being on it and having one vote. I think that's not a problem.
Yeah.
But that's just my opinion. And again, I would probably go back to smooth feeling to my council over that, or how things evolve, but I don't feel comfortable being just a guy from Redwood, like on the nuclear issue, because that was such a hot topic. I went back to the council and said that they came down with Richard and presented that to the council. So that it's just not one guy with one opinion having to get in the right spot and throw out a ball that found everything outside. If it's truly representing Redwood, then Redwood needs to have a voice to give to me to say, go do that.
And just to your point too, Frank, like those layers of representation that, like, you know, the Yurok tribe represents many, you know, enrolled Yurok tribal members, but also Natalie represents probably a number of those people as well as a county supervisor, or like, you know, the overlap between the Lake Ranch area and City of Blue Lake or whatever. And so it kind of is like doubling up in a way. And so I do see, you know, the direct customer, you know, representation route as why that might be. But
Well, another thing that comes back to mind, the big selling point that was pushed when we about being a part of the JPA, and having this whole committee or the CCE period, was that it was going to give lower rates to the payers, because RCEA was not gonna have all the overhead that PG&E has, and they have to absorb all this cost. It was gonna make this it was gonna make it more affordable for electricity. Well, that's not part of the stated mission of RCEA, to make the rates lower, unless I've read that wrong, is talking about more things, you know, for the usage of the power. And which actually, by having some of the stuff that the Native Americans have done for us in the tribe, we're able to do things we couldn't do before. We've got several items that we've gotten grants for, and we've got administrative fee, but also the county, in particular, the nations have benefited by that. You know, by having better grids, by building solid grids, because they're at the end of the grid, up there like in Blue Place. So they're out there at the end of the grid. So if they have a stronger microgrid built into the system, the county becomes better. And so why shouldn't they be part of the CCE? They're actually contributing to making Humboldt County's grid more sustainable and solid by being on it and having that grant with it. Am I good? Enough said.
Sherry, did you have something more about?
Yeah, I thought it was more, or maybe that's the way I just squared it in my brain, was that you have this cities and then it's the county, but there's an unincorporated part of the county that is really what's represented here in this, the CCA part. And so if, for instance, the water district had a vote, everybody who's both in the water district and in, say, the city of Arcata, or whatever the cities that we serve, in a way, those people would have like double representation, because they could come to me and go, hey, Sherry, blah, 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 you know, I want you to vote this way on the topic. And then they could also go to their city council person who is sitting on this board and also go, okay, so in a way, it was kind of like a double representation. That's kind of the way it was explained to me and how I squared it up in my head, or how come I can vote.
So I guess I'm only assuming that all of the tribal power customers are part of the county group of 35,561 customers. Is that correct?
Well, no, I mean, they could live anywhere, they could live in Arcata, Eureka, I mean, I would, not to speak on behalf of the tribes, but your council doesn't just represent who lives within the bounds of a reservation or a rancheria, it's, you know, all of the members of the tribe, so.
Yeah, I mean, it goes sort of the other direction too, where on the reservation, for instance, the county either doesn't have jurisdiction or won't take responsibility in some instances, and there's gray areas surrounding who's responsible for what. And generally, in my experience, here on council, we push that toward sovereign land, sovereign decision making. And so whether or not that impacts this question of how a tribal member living on a reservation is represented, I don't know.
And I do think when the CPC made this, CCAs were new and there was no tribal representation, and RCA was the first CCA to have tribal representation. So, I mean, to Natalie's point, I think this is a great thing to bring up to the CPC as a, you know, not a problem, but an opportunity to have you know, equal representation on CCA decision making.
So Director Arroyo, tell me a little bit more about this. Though you have a certain number of weighted votes for CCE business alone.
Yeah.
And then general board business, we all have one vote, correct?
Yeah.
And so your weighted vote is based on number of constituents essentially?
It's based on the number of electric customer accounts. So it's the greatest number of accounts are in the unincorporated part of the counties. They're weighted kind of proportionate to accounts. And I recognize that like a lot of tribal members, you live in the unincorporated part of the county and be part of that base of, you know, people who make up that vote. And I could do a better job. I think I could always do a better job of like reaching out and engagement, and that may be like a piece of it, but I mean, I think there's an added complication with, you know, well, I mean, the Hoopa Valley Public Utilities District, for example, like Hoopa is not a member yet of this board. I also like don't know how that would factor in, you know, then we would have to probably reallocate because they're a public utility district that does serve electric customers. So it would, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there's, we would have to reallocate this should we have additional members who are serving a customer base, but right now I can see why the CPUC set it up this way. I think I'm raising the question because it's come to me several times, and I also wanted to emphasize that idea of having as much business be voted on collectively as we possibly can, so.
So I think to me, it kind of sounds like then we would like, you know, a little bit maybe more explanation from legal counsel, and also as we have kind of been this board that is pushing the boundaries, and we're the first to add tribal members to our board, that maybe, you know, we could be the ones that bring that to the CPUC and kind of, you know, make that push. And so maybe, you know, working with Nancy to get a little more information, and then maybe there's a letter that we write or some action that we take as a board to push that forward. You know, I would be interested in that, and thank you, Natalie, you know, for bringing that to us. I think that's a great point.
Curious if Director Ramos has anything.
Yeah, I never really understood how it worked, and I think I'm learning a lot here this evening, this evening, but I understand the issues. I understand why, you know, many of our on-reservation customers, some of which, although it's under the tribe's jurisdiction, there's also some that live within city boundaries. And actually my house is, so I get to vote in Elisa's elections. You know, so I mean, there's weird jurisdictional stuff that happens all the time with that, so. Yeah, I think it's a good idea just to go back and take a look at it. Certainly, I'm not offended by it. There's a good reason why it's there. Whether or not it should be, or we should take another look at it, it's another question. I mean, probably there's a good legal reason for it.
Well, are we the only CCE that has tried
To my knowledge, yes,
at this moment?
yeah.
I know that Commissioner Darcy Hope has been, I think I talked to her earlier in the week on another couple of issues with the CPUC. She's been pushing the commission and PG&E, particularly on some issues with PG&E to being engaged. And I think she'd be receptive to
Okay, do you guys have some direction from us?
Just I think we can table this until next month. We can bring it back. We can have the benefit of Nancy, you know, giving her input. I think the direction that I'm hearing is, you know, we want more information on what the CPUC rules are that kind of set it up this way in the first place. And then we're just looking for what opportunities we have to be more inclusive going forward. So whether that be, you know, advocacy with the CPUC or more information, I think what I'm explaining in terms of, you know, bringing as much back to the full board as we can. So kind of this outline our action plan, even minus any, you know, CPUC action that might kind of override all of it. We can kind of have an internal process too. So we can outline all that, and it doesn't sound like there's any harm in delaying this vote for a month until we have that information. So we can just give that a simple direction.
Do we want to table? I mean, yeah, or if that's okay, we don't need to have it to vote on it. Okay.
I mean, in light of a no vote, we'll stay under the same weighted voting that we.
That's good, yeah.
May I make one more comment? I also, the matter of, our non-voting CCE members of the board aside, it's a good reminder to the meeting, you know, we are keeping that meeting and reaffirming it next month. You know, I just want y'all to know that I'm conscious of that, and this makes me more conscious of it to revisit it and see what the numbers are. it's a big responsibility to have a lot of votes, and anyone with a larger population is, you know, gonna feel that responsibility on this board. So when possible, if we can take the time to really discuss anything we may be divided on so that we can reach a, you know, so that one member or two members aren't throwing their weight around to the detriment of everybody else, I think that's important. So it's just sort of a process thing. I'll be attentive to that, and I ask that you speak up if myself, Director Bauer, you know, those of us who have just happen to have more votes under our belt are going in a direction we really think is flawed. Thank you.
Oh, can I add one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Just that, I mean, I know very little bit about this thus far, so I'm glad we're tabling it and bringing more information back, but just from the little bit I do know. If what weights the vote is number of customers within a jurisdiction that each one of us represents, then the weighted model that would count that you're off reservation within the county doesn't, at first blush, work for me. So, I'm just, you know, we'll see where this takes us, but I'll be glad to get the legal report. Thanks for bringing it up.
Any final thoughts on that before we move on? Thanks, folks, and we will table that for next month, and that will take us into item 7, which is old CCE business. Yes. Okay, sorry, this is different than my jurisdiction. What do we do it? Because I thought we take public comment, that's when people can pull it, but then we take it on in a minute. Okay, so any comment on item 5.5? Anybody else? All right. Item 7. So this is our annual Humboldt Sawmill Company Alternative Biomass Use Report, and it is information only. So do we have our report?
Yeah, I'll be giving the report, and Director Richard is out, so I will be filling in straight into biomass for my first year report. Yeah. So as we're getting, nice. It's a good thing. It's gonna sit here and come and get okay, straight into biomass. So just as kind of a recap of how we got this item on this docket. We currently have a power purchase agreement with Humboldt Sawmills Company, and we purchased power from their biomass plant. We have an agreement that was extended in 2021 and currently expires in 2031. It's a source that makes up about 20% of our current energy portfolio. So it's a pretty big chunk. And then in 2021, when the agreement was extended, there were concerns raised by community members and some members of the Community Advisory Committee, primarily related to potential air quality impacts and that the source, although it meets the definition of renewable, it's not carbon free. So we still have emissions related to this source, and that is very concerning. And then to respond to these concerns, the board directed staff to periodically review the contract and assess the kind of alternate biomass uses and other environmental concerns. And so in figuring out kind of a mechanism for how to do that, memorandum of understanding was adopted. And that memorandum, it was intended really to kind of increase transparency and encourage discussion about pathways for alternative uses of the feedstock, and just kind of have a discussion about the emissions and other issues. And so it was never intended, and still is not intended, to allow like a cancellation of the contract. That really wasn't what this process was set up to do. Really, again, just kind of increase the discussion and transparency. So with that, so we received annual reporting. This was, we're supposed to do it in about May. It was last year in 2024. I think we actually started reviewing the documents received from Humboldt Sawmills. I think it was in August. And then typically it would more timely come to the CAC and the board. It's just given other factors involved. This year it's a little bit delayed. So just to say the information feels a little dated, but it is kind of the most current we're working with. So the reporting materials have been reviewed and discussed by the Biomass Technical Advisory Group and the Community Advisory Committee at this point prior to coming here. We had a variety of information available for these discussions, with notices of violation and the Humboldt Sawmills responses, we have weather test data, report and source of testing, and the plant thoroughbreds, as they're reported to the Air Quality Management District. So, and we'll just say we don't separately analyze this data, so, we presented the biomass technical advisory group members have a lot of expertise and they kind of dive a little more deeply into it. But we are not on our own, like determining, did this meet the air quality standard? We're not, that's not our role, and that's not what we've done during these discussions. So review of the material, so we have some visualizations, just kind of to show overall what we've seen in the reports, and this was compiled by a former staff member, Joseph Sloan. So one of the big questions has been sort of the geographic origin of the feedstock they're receiving. And so what you see on the graph here is the orange is sourced from outside the county, primarily this would be Mendocino County operations for HSE. And so, but you see predominantly it is sourced from within Humboldt County, so very, very close by. The supplier origin, is it, where is it coming from? Mostly it is from Humboldt Redwood Company, and Mendocino Redwood Company forest lands. There's a little bit of externally sourced, and those tend to be from, like, for example, utility clearing projects, things like that. So sometimes that ends up at the mill. One of the big questions, I think, sorry, this is one slide before that. So again, internal sawmill, this is the questions that have come up have been related to, does this actually help with our forest health maintenance? Like, are we out there doing thinning and that's what's coming here? Or is it truly like sawmill waste that's being processed? And we see from this graph that it is predominantly sawmill waste. It's not other, forest land products that are coming through. Diesel fuel by gallon over time, I'm not sure this is particularly relevant, other than just to say, they do still use diesel when boilers go offline, or something like that, or to get them going in the first place, they have to have some diesel input, so that's all part of it as well. They have looked at metric tons of carbon equivalents per megawatt generation by year. So we've got that being discussed at these groups. And then, biomass versus non-biomass, again, this is just looking at what is that diesel input, which is the minimum. So just to kind of recap on the role in our portfolio, I think, the take-home message from this slide is really that it plays a relatively large outsized role in the portfolio, and that's largely because it's base load, and so it's not dependent on time of day. And so we're able to really rely on this when we don't have solar running and other avenues that will help us kind of balance that load. It gets more and more important as we look at the slice of data framework. So it's a highly valuable resource. And then in 2021, when the contract was extended, we actually got a better deal essentially. So it becomes really an economically viable and affordable source of power, relatively speaking. So one of the things that we set up when the MOU was created was to kind of look at, again, this concept of alternative uses of biomass feedstock. And we have received information from Humboldt Sawmills Company that they are looking at that. The plant is older, it's not going to last forever either way, and so they are definitely exploring that. And primarily right at the moment, they're more looking at their facility in Mendocino County and looking at if they could convert that to biomass to hydrogen essentially, but that is not their specific plan for Humboldt just yet. But it is something they're exploring and I'm getting some experience in. So I wanted to report on that. Some feedback from the biomass technical advisory group when they met, what constitutes as mill waste. So they had some questions around this. So I think we'll be asking more questions about this as years go on and kind of using this as our punch list and getting more information to relate to these concerns or comments that were raised. The air emission is data is very granular, and so it would be helpful to see more aggregated. So, I think we're kind of looking for some of that analysis to be done And not just receive the information. And so we'll see, you know, I can't make any promises about that. You know, again, I don't know that it's really our role to be pouring through this and making these assumptions, or that we have the staff or expertise to do so. But happy to look into it further. Particulates, you know, there's a request to basically look at particulates, you know, that are farther from the plant rather than just near. However, PM 2.5 and 10 were not actually submitted, so we'll definitely be requesting that for next year's reporting. And then the moisture content of the feedstock that was used for testing the emissions appeared that it was potentially drier than the average feedstock, so that might change the emissions, and so we wanted to look at redoing that. I don't think we received any information from the airport that they'd be requiring that or in processing that. And then when we took it to the CAC just earlier this month, they were interested again in seeing more analysis. So we will give that some thought, but I don't want to overcommit on that. It's a little outside of our area of expertise. There are other, you know, they wanted to see at one point the CAC received a presentation for some engineering students at HSU back in 2020, and they kind of had a wide range of potential uses, and so they were hoping to see that dived into a little deeper. And I don't know that we have any authority to really direct, you know, calls on the companies to look closer at any particular technology, other than you know, just making suggestions. And really looking for the long-term plan in terms of biomass procurement. And I think a lot of that is, you know, to be decided as we get closer to the ending of the contract and see where we're at with the energy markets. And then a more specific question to figure out when we can in violation of the power purchase agreement terms. We have this, you know, we have this view, and it says, you know, kind of add the transparency, add the discussion about this, but there's no real trigger to say, and we would cancel the contract if. And so there were some folks, not unanimously, but some folks that we wanted to see that mechanism in play on the CAC. And then one of the questions that came up was how do the plant's greenhouse gas emissions compare with those of other emitting plants? Richard was able to provide an answer for this, and it is a little bit higher than natural gas, and it's actually a little bit higher than several other biomass plants, and that's just because it's really, really old equipment. So that's something on our radar, you know, to see, you know, we're always, you know, as we see opportunities for maybe improving equipment, things like that, grants that we come up, we always pass this along to most honest communities to make them aware of opportunities to improve equipment. Okay, that's the last slide. So again, this is an informational item really intended to come back and just let you all know that we are doing the work, we are working through these discussions, we are, you know, talking with the CAC. And again, this is really an item, and the goal of this is to increase transparency. So that's why it's coming here as informational. We'll do it again next year. And you know, each year I think we get more and more information. Just from my experience sitting on the CAC, I've seen that, you know, each year there's always still more requests to be done, but it has certainly improved from where it was and initially getting, you know, no information. It's a huge improvement from that. So I'd be happy to take questions. And
Thank you, Beth. Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
So my first question is, when you compare greenhouse gas emissions, in Scotia with other biomass plants, are those other biomass plants also mill sites, that have multiple uses for their products and their byproducts of biomass? And anyway, I have a little more to say about that, but my basic question is it apples to apples, or are we looking at other biomass plants such as the Blue Lake Power Plant, where all the wood feedstock was trucked in as opposed to generated on site? You know, and I'll just say while I'm talking that I'm kind of a conservationist from a very young age, you know, where the whole don't use more, only use what you need, have multiple uses, use everything at least 4 times before you throw it in the garbage, and you know, that kind of thing, right? So I'm pretty impressed with what's going on in Scotia and how like even just in recent years, they built a conveyor system, a covered conveyor system to move the wood waste from point A to point B. It's covered so it doesn't get rained on. They used to truck it from point A to point B. Now it's a conveyor that's run on electricity that's generated in their own plants. And all their excess heat that they generate goes into their kiln drying process, which eventually produces dry wood. And the waste from the dry wood goes back into their furnaces to produce more electricity, and that's their dryer feedstock. Which helps to maintain their mix, to keep their carbon emissions low. And anyway, it's kind of this pretty amazing machine that they have going on there, where they have so many different parts and pieces, and over time, they've actually, reduced some of their carbon footprint. And I'm not sure that that some of these reports capture a lot of that benefit, right? And so, I mean, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, we don't want biomass in Blue Lake, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense anymore. At the height of the lumber, the timber industry, it might have made sense, but we were trucking all this wood in there and burning it there, and we didn't have all these secondary benefits of the system that they have in Scotia. And so, anyway, I feel like, anytime we talk about carbon-free or, any of this stuff, we're only talking about a piece of that puzzle, and there's so many other pieces. And so, I understand that people are concerned about air quality, and I think that they should run a clean show, and we need to be on top of that. But at the same time, when you start talking about, well, what are their alternatives if they're not gonna burn it on site, what are they gonna do? Well, they're gonna truck it somewhere else, and so our greenhouse picture, is huge. It's hugely impacted by these different factors, and we don't always bring them into the equation. So I just wanna, kind of bring that piece up because they seem to have a really great symbiotic, situation going on right there. And we're the benefit, we're benefiting from it, our customers, and I know there's never a way to factor in the greenhouse costs if, when you start adding trucking, I don't know if that's factored in your equation, in your presentation here, but.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for those comments. I think the answer is essentially no. I think when I say, it's higher than other biomass plants, it's really just looking at like the output. Again, because of that older equipment, the emissions are a little bit different, but certainly not, I don't believe that that's taking into, a full life cycle analysis kind of calculation. I could be wrong on that. Richard would definitely be able to answer more clearly.
One big reason that this plant has higher is just that the product is so much wetter here in Humboldt County, that a lot of the plants that he was comparing it to that were in much drier climates. And so kind of one of the comments that the Biomass Technical Advisory Committee brought up is, the drier the feedstock, the less emissions. And so
Who did the study?
study of comparing.
Comparing the. Did we do it or did we do it?
Richard pulled publicly available data and compared. Director Engel, the Power Resources.
Yeah, and what's, go ahead with your study, because there's a lot to that. And for our meeting directors, information, I used to manage that one. I don't want to board now. The heavy, we call it, the sequestration.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but probably like the DD one, which is like wheel burner. It's all about that. And they're a much drier product. At this point, and when I was managing, we blocked fuel in for everything. Look at you better. And it was pretty wet. And it took us 2.5 tons of fuel to make a megawatt. Where if you would go to real grader, they would be 1.5 tons of fuel to make it. And they charged the people, if they bought their fuel in, there was a threshold, and I'm thinking of 15% of the rings of the bell. They would pay more for the fuel that they bought if it was below 15, and they charge and they deduct and actually fine you if you were over 15%. And the average fuel in this plant will be 50%. Because you cut down a tree is 50%. Yeah, so that's primarily the waste that you see coming out of the mill is they're taking the raw log right off the raw log decks that come in unless they sat out in the yard for a while. They're taking those logs and they're cutting them up into lumber. So the sawdust and the chips that are produced by that product is going to be 50% moisture content. Consequently, it takes more to make magnet and more additional water. That's a good question to say. You know, what kind of, how ripe are my apples, I guess, in the basket of apples that we're comparing here. And just my opinion for all intents and purposes, the fact that you're getting rid of this fuel here, the big trade-off is you're not spending diesel to haul over the hills or wheelbarrow. They were talking about solar energy. And I think there's, and I never thought of the stuff you had it in there where they're taking the dry kiln. If you didn't have a dry kiln, they use natural gas for a period of time until they built lines and steam to have the kilns drop and directly from the kiln. So they would have a big footprint of natural gas pipeline that they're using of gas to dry them. And so now they're not using the natural gas to do that. But
Go ahead.
On the later side, there was reference to the EPA and emissions. It wasn't clear to me whether or not there was a threshold requirement in the EPA.
They have to be in good standing, and so, we did bring this to the board and have the legal counsel look, so there have been claims, you know, they've gotten violations, and so, claims that they weren't in good standing. And so the direction we got at that time was that, you know, if they had a valid permit with the air quality district, that's our threshold. I will say that we're very engaged when we receive information from the public of, you know, violations, or I think there was a new, claim that there was, information from the EPA. We take that, and every time we go directly to the air quality, district staff and, you know, corroborate that they still have a valid permit.
Just because I'm learning, two questions, is there pre-processing of the wet fuel before it goes through the power plant? No. And the byproduct is primarily ash, or what do we get at the tail end of the burning?
there's ash that is distributed in the fields, particularly Ferndale, where the driver comes out and hauls it off, and they put it out with the cows. And they mix it in that, but so years ago, I used to use a lot of sawdust and shavings when those aren't available.
And they sell biochars.
They sell biochar. So there's ash and biochar within that, right?
So they have a program where farmers can get free loads of the ash for their fields, and then they sell the biochar.
Thanks.
You might not have the answer to this question, and they might not provide it either, and Beth, you touched a little bit on just like how we look for grant opportunities about updating equipment, and like, is there really any interest or, you know, movement from Humboldt Sawmill on wanting to improve that equipment? Because, yeah, if you've been down there, it's like you're walking through a Cold War era, you know, war room, it's like all chrome and dials, and it does seem, you know, very old equipment, and that, you know, I kind of just wonder that, is there interest in wanting to update it, or is that ultimately leading down a line where it would just run until you can't and then decommission, or, you know, do they talk about that or give us those updates?
Yeah, I will say, I am not entirely sure, I haven't been in those discussions, but I am headed to the plant tomorrow. But, so I'm gonna, you know, I took a tour a few years ago as part of the community advisory committee, but certainly with new eyes, I will be visiting tomorrow to kind of get a better feeling for those types of questions and long-term planning as much as they're willing to share.
See, and they have undergone a big project to update their control system.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's still, I think, in the works, but I also haven't heard any.
I think they brought the newer control system on, not too long.
Beth will get to see it tomorrow.
Yeah.
We're gonna go.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments before we open it up to the public?
I would just comment, I Cold Warrior, I guess that, that control room reminded me of a movie I saw about Chernobyl. So it's got that flavor, but I think too, it kind of, it looks that way, but in some ways, it's just, it's mechanical and, you know, mechanical things still work when they're old. So it's not a bad thing. Necessarily.
Well, and I know that, yeah, the updated control system was a big push, I feel like, because that was gonna help with this, the startup basically is what really produces the most, missions, and so to streamline that and make it more automated, so hopefully it's that.
I would assume it's continuous though, it's not a batch plant, right? It's, you started, yeah. Shut it down for maintenance.
Well, during the when it was an earthquake that we had, had that one you said, they, there were some power lines that feed into people, they feed into PG&E's grid on the 60,000 volt line. The poles go out on the advantage of the, and because of all of the rain and the earthquake and all of the stuff that went on, the poles fell into the grid. Yeah, when that happens, that's a big effect on the power. You're pumping electricity out into the grid and you suddenly take that load away from it. The steam that's generated, that's a lot of steam, has to go somewhere. And so when it goes out the roof, they hit the safety's lift and it pushes the steam out of the roof. And then the water all goes away from your boiler and you need hot water because they're recirculating the water that's when it comes below steam, whatever it is, 12 degrees, when you drop below that heat, then you no longer steam and you have hot water. Well, rather than bringing water out of the water tank that's 40 degrees or 50 degree temperature water, you have this, you use the 300, probably 200 degree water to recreate your steam again. Well, so now the water that you grab, because you dumped all the water with the steam, is cold. And that's what happens to your boiler. So your boiler crashes and everything goes black. And they put this, to look in for the revenue that came in for you for that month of December. They're sitting there in the dark. And probably the sad part of the story is they're, I don't know if this meeting actually recorded anything going on over here.
Yeah.
Oh, great. They can't fire them. But, they called me up and wanted to know how big a generator was gonna take to get this place going. And they don't have it. You know, PG&E, because PG&E was really at fault. Which was, I thought, pretty miraculous for PG&E, but they said they would get the generators and work on it to help do it. So PG&E in conjunction with Humboldt Sawmill worked on getting their back up because their sawmill was down and everything was down at that. And they sent employees out, and then just, no extra there with generators, welding and everything. So they've gone through a lot of different phases to make this place work, and there's, some of that's best that I left unsaid, but, they're a good source for your county, because when they're up and running, they're not taking power out of your already flimsy grid that you have. And they're otherwise, if they didn't exist, and then for a time they didn't, the sawmill would have to buy its electricity from PG&E's lines and take away from other parts of wherever you're gonna get your fuel. And that's either gonna be in the realistic side of it, the gas power plant down there at Hills Landing, But you see what you drive by, or you're gonna bring this electricity again from Wheelbrader over Highway 36, and you're gonna bring that electricity to sustain these lights is gonna be taken care of. And that's all things that are worked out by the PUC and the air quality people are in conjunction with that to support that in whatever, no matter where we buy our fuel, you're still gonna have those two sources of power that are what are gonna feed the lights that we're looking at, depending where you're at the location. So when that plant's up and running is good, because you're not taking the power from other places, which aren't necessarily vital. Or we move another part.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
I would, this is like a local resource for us. And I think what you said as far as encouraging improvement in the process of the vibes, like what are the, what might they be doing in the time, and 3 or 4 years down the line, what innovation might there be? And as RCEA and a customer to influence that as best we can, and encourage them to develop. And then a question. When we were dealing with this nearly a year ago, I would like to feel as an entity we're better prepared to respond. And one of the things promised was that they would measure air quality away from Scotia and out in other areas. If that being done, I think there's an interest which would us. That's it.
Yeah, I don't know that they are monitoring, outside. I will clarify on that tomorrow. And get that information, how far out the monitoring and be able to report.
I thought Humboldt might have been involved in putting these stations to measure.
Our staff, in coordination with the air quality district, did install some purple air monitors. And, the air quality district has been continuing to increase the purple air monitors, throughout the county. I think last year we reported out on some of those initial, results, that it was too soon to tell. And the one issue that we were seeing with those is they were very source influenced. So there would be like a huge spike because a house right next to it had a wood stove. And so, you know, we haven't done a lot more on that. I know Humboldt Sawmill wasn't doing that, but we were doing it just to gather more information. But we can follow up with Air Quality District on what they're doing, and then on looking at the sensors we've installed reports back.
All right. Not seeing any other hands here. Let's open it up to the public. Is there anybody here? Is there anybody on Zoom? All right, any final thoughts? Thank you, Beth, for that report, and I know that you're gonna learn a lot more even tomorrow going down there.
Sorry, the timing of it.
Ask all of our big
Yeah,
questions,
yeah.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you folks, and that will take us then into, we will be finished with CCP business. There is no old business, and that'll take us to item 10. New business, 10.1, which is to approve a cost of service rate setting analysis solicitation. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, I will give the staff report. We're coming to the board to get direction, approval on issuing a cost of service rate setting solicitation. We discussed this at mid-year. Currently, or not at mid-year, at budget setting in May. Currently, we set our rates based on a PG&E rate discount. So our rates are tied to PG&Es, and when there's when their rates go up or down, ours mirror that, which currently it's a 0.5% discount. This, on the launch of the CCE, this initial design was practical because it was really easy for customers to understand. And, as Frank mentioned before, we could state that we were cheaper than PG&E, and that was, a big selling point for people to stay with RCEA as their provider. However, this method of setting rates has resulted in some pretty significant cash flow challenges throughout the years. Most recently, when we were setting this fiscal year budget, we paused our renewable procurement standards in an attempt to balancing the budget. When we did present that to the board, we said that we would be coming back to you at looking at moving to a cost of service rate setting. So that's what we're doing today. And just to explain a cost of service rate setting model we design rates based on the cost to provide service versus being linked to PG&E. And this setting would take into account board adopted goals and procurement standards. There's a chance we could be more expensive than PG&E at times, but a lot of the CCEs we talk to still compare their rates to PG&E and try to stay competitive. We recognize at the end of the day, we're competing for customers with PG&E. So reasons to consider a cost of service model now, beyond the cash flow issues we've had in the past with following PG&E's rates. So there was a court case heard that was Boyd versus Central Coast Community Energy 3CE. And in that, Boyd cited that the electricity rates imposed by the CCA were invalid because they were a tax and they weren't voter approved. In that case, the court cited on the side of the CCA and said that the rates were valid, but indeed they were a tax pursuant to Proposition 26. However, they were exempt from voter approval because the CCA could show that they were based on the cost to offer the service. So this has a lot of CCAs rethinking their rate structure model, and many are moving to a cost of service model. Some other pros to moving to this way of setting rates is it reduces the frequency of rate changes for our customers on the generation side. PG&E can have multiple rate changes throughout the year. It would stabilize forecasted revenue, offer RCEA better financial planning. It would allow for providing customized rates that reflect our service territory. A lot of the PG&E territory has a summer, peak where rates are more expensive because of loads for air conditioning and such. Whereas, in our territory, we see that more in winter with heating. And then ultimately, it helps for RCA to secure a credit rating, which, it actually makes it cheaper to do business. So if we don't have a credit rating, we have to put up securities when we're entering these big contracts. Our next steps is we would issue the solicitation for a third party to do this analysis for us. We would bring the contract back to the board for approval. And then upon completion of the analysis, so, you know, we have like what it looks like, what our rates would look like under our existing costs. And then we would start gathering public input and do outreach, and then bring that information back to the board for a decision on how we're gonna set rates in the future. And so I guess I wanted to point that out, like this decision today is just for us to have someone do the analysis, which is a first step on I think, this is a big change for RCEA. And we need to go into it with eyes wide open of like what this will actually look like for our customer rates. We're very sensitive to that and want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence. Public know and doing as much engagement as possible. So you're not making any decision to change today. It's first step. And I will say before I close out, we've had staff in the last couple months just doing surveys of other CCAs that have already moved to this model. They've been very, very positive of, you know, one CEO of San Jose Clean Energy was like, I finally can sleep at night, not like worried about what PG&E is going to do to the rates. For the most part, they've been able to stay under PG&E's rates. But there have been times where they've gone over and they haven't seen a large increase in opt-outs in those times. You know, we're not apples to apples to San Jose, but we're starting to just gather information from our counterparts, and it seems like a really good idea to start moving in this direction.
All right, thank you, Eileen. Do we have any questions?
Is there preliminary assessment by your staff that would lead you to believe the rates would be generally rising, or does that give you any sense of what this would mean for them in general?
No.
Okay.
I mean, when we set the budget, we do look at what it costs each year to you know, buy the electricity and do all of that. And so I won't say that we've not ever looked at costs when we're setting our budget. It's just the rates are dictated by PG&E. And the energy market is so volatile. As you'll learn, you know, we could get an update from our energy, you know, the energy risk update, and it shows, you know, our revenues plummeting. Or the next one, it's like all of a sudden, you know, the market shifted and it's much better. So, no, the short answer is no.
Okay.
Is this decision too predicated on the PG&E strategy to move to a time of day rate schedule system? Aren't they moving for a whole new?
So they already have a time of use rate schedule, and our rate schedule mirrors theirs now. I don't, are you referring to the slice of day that?
Yeah.
so a slice of day,
Seems like it'd be hard to find.
so that was enacted as of January 2025, and that was our big worry of whether or not we were gonna be able to procure efficiently for that. I will say TDA was really able to knock it out of the park as far as modeling, and as of now, 2025, we're in compliance with slice of day. So no, I don't, this isn't so much to do with that. The how we allocate for customer class and all that is still, we're looking for a vendor to help us understand how that would work for us.
Without knowing what the cost will be, the rate will be during our annual budgeting, then you're saying there's a modeling that if we do that staff, is that in-house staff modeling or?
We're hoping in this solicitation that they'll provide us a modeling tool that we'll use to set rates for the upcoming year.
We're about right now though, in our rate is depending on PG&E, and we don't know what PG&E is gonna be.
So we hire the Energy Authority, and they have a model that they use that, it's a little bit of a guessing versus science, and they do a forecast. So we have access to a model that we can pull, what they're forecasting. And then as they get more and more information through the different rate setting proceedings, they update those models.
So throughout a year, we're adapting, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I think Lori has maybe a little more to add on.
Sure, yeah, I was just gonna say, we largely, we haven't done this analysis ourselves, but largely we do this analysis, do the financial modeling based on. We have, the Energy Authority who uses rate forecasts from a rate forecasting company. And we're able to also do forecasts for generation rates, and that's what goes into this modeling. But largely, we can just look at like revenues minus our power costs. And we can know like if we're actually coming in on the budget there. And we'll see in our mid-budget review next month, but whether or not that's the case. I think the details for this cost of service is what we can actually include as a cost of service. So outside of just our power costs, we have all these other things that go into our budget, staff costs, program costs, all those type of things. And I think that will be sort of like the legalese of like what actually goes into a cost of service out of what RCEA actually expends every year. So putting that into a model will help. And then I think that the financial model actually will become maybe easier to interpret over time because we're now under contract with Sandrini Solar. They're producing solar. They're producing enough energy to serve 40% of our load. And so that's like a stabilized cost that we have. So barring any like huge regulatory changes, like the slice of day RA thing that come up, that we have to kind of pivot to accommodate. I think it will get easier actually to project our energy costs.
And the items that are allowed to be incorporated into the RCEA rate setting are regulated by the CPUC.
I think that's a legal interpretation at this point. So because of this legal case, what they determined was, 3CE was basing their costs on actual cost of service, and it's going to take lawyers to like parse that out. Like, well, what does that mean? So I think it's just being decided now. And I know this is something that you all have probably dealt with taxes. And I've never, so we'll have to learn all that stuff. Like, when you set a tax or a water rate, for instance, like what goes into that. So I'll just be learning.
Yeah, they're citing Proposition 26, which isn't through the CPUC, it's through the state. They in the 3CE case, they did deem that money into reserves a small amount for programs. I mean, like they looked at their whole budget and deemed it was justified and reasonable. So I think a lot of people are modeling after that, but also being prepared for any future litigation of people over those. in what they.
And so it's in the event that comes to go up. Is there a marketing response then where we change directions to some extent to push for the portfolio, the energy production portfolio rather than the cost or?
Yeah, I mean, Beth and I were just talking about this, but do you wanna, I don't wanna.
Yeah, well, it's just that I think it needs to be a very collaborative process with the community. And I think that this is, and as we look, I really see this tied to our strategic plan. And we look at our renewable goals and we'll have this information. Kind of like, if we achieve those, what does that cost? And if we go to this model, what does that cost? So we'll need to make those decisions. I certainly don't want to do that in the vacuum. But yeah, I think it's just implications and we'll be able to make issues of impacting those kind of overall goals that we have and have hopefully really good information to make those decisions with. Which I don't think, we certainly don't have now. Right now we just have goals and we don't really know what the cost of that is. And this will change that. So we'll get real about like, okay, if we're hitting 100% renewable, this is what the bill looks like. And then can we tolerate that? Does that look good for our community? What does our community think of that? It's a whole process. So looking forward to having those discussions, but definitely a really kind of like turning on its head how we've done it so far.
Okay, other questions? We'll open it. Did I open it? I don't know. Okay, public comment. Somebody here. Is there anybody on Zoom? All right, then we can move towards, the motion that's up there. If we want to go forward and authorize the solicitation. The one, I just don't know how it could ever be more expensive than what PG&E is charging right now, so. That's maybe another question I have. It's always going, how could anybody afford anything, but, hopefully also being able to take a deeper look at, where those rates are coming from and compare them to PG&E. Also, again, empower the public to know and understand better how the rates are set and how, what they're paying for and what generation versus transmission and all of that, so. I think that there's a lot of exciting possibilities too for the public engagement and around this also, so. We have a motion or a non-motion. Well, all the governments. Right, we have a motion to authorize section 1 and a second. All in favor? Aye. And that carries. Thank you, folks. I'm looking forward to hearing back about that. All right, that'll take us to item 10.2, which is our reserve policy adoption. Staff report.
Great, you're in here for me again. Lori may come up to help again if needed. But so I see this in tandem with moving to a cost of service model, because they did deem having a healthy cash reserve for financial security should be considered when setting their rates. Historically, RCEA has set our cash reserve targets based on the CCE program launch strategy, which was adopted and revised in May 2018. We haven't had a formal financial reserves policy per se. So the target in the launch strategy was that 5 years post launch, the target was set at 35 million, which would have been May 2022, and a minimum target of 10 million in adverse market conditions. As those of you who are on the board then no, we hit adverse market conditions with COVID and many other things that we have not met the 35 million target, and we went below our minimum target for a while. So the objectives of having a reserve policy are to maintain long-term RCEA financial independence and rate stability, a reoccurring theme. To meet our strategic objectives, secure favorable commercial terms with vendors and power providers, and the cost of doing business goes down as they deem you as having less risk to do business with. Support RCA pursuing and maintaining a credit rating. Providing a source of funds for unintended expenditures, and then to make cash available for other operational needs as approved. We did look at CCAs that had adopted reserve policies. And you can see they range, you know, anywhere from a minimum. And the reason there's some weird numbers is some did it as a percent of the year cash on hand and others did days cash on hand. And let me define cash on hand. That's just unrestricted cash that RCA has. And then the targets are set based on the operational cost of running the CCE. So this would not include, you know, capital one-time expenditures or grant funds. So they range from around 90 days all the way up to a maximum of 500 days. But what we were seeing, you know, over and over again as industry standard is that 180-day target. So what we're recommending in an RCA reserve policy, again, is to define the reserves as unrestricted cash position. So this, you know, wouldn't include assets like, you know, we have the airport microgrid, you know, we couldn't liquidate that quickly if we got in a pinch. So really just cash on hand. Set the reserve targets based on annual CCE operating expenses. And then set a minimum target of 120 days cash on hand. Based on our adopted budget this fiscal year, that's roughly 23 million. And then set a maximum target of 180 days cash on hand, which would be 35 million. I can't believe that the math, you know, came out to almost exactly what the CCE launch strategy was. Whoever was here and drafted that did an amazing job. So the good news is RC is on track to meet the maximum reserve target mid-2025. Which, you know, I know is a little different news than we got when we were adopting the budget. And we'll talk more about this when we bring the mid-year budget review to you. Once that target is reached and maintained for a 12-month period, we'd like to explore with board direction options for directing net revenue back into the community. And so one idea we have is looking at a dividend policy. A dividend would be bill credits to customers. The other CPAs that have had this, they, you know, once they've closed out the year and if they've exceeded the revenue, then that money goes back to customers. Other options are looking at infrastructure investments. You know, we've got lots of ideas, but we'd like more direction on getting community input on, you know, what types of policies, if once we've maintained our cash reserves and engage the community advisory committee, and then bringing back a proposal.
Thank you, Emily. Go ahead, Sherry.
Maybe this is a completely different bucket. What's the story with office building? Where does that, yeah, was that from reserve or was that from some other?
We were looking to finance the construction. So we paused the design quotes we got. The design and engineering quotes were about 1.2 million. And with the budget crunch, we put that out. We want to relook at how we did that solicitation and but we own a lot. Our plan is still to build. And then if, you know, I think what we can do is add to our reserves policy if the board would like us to start a separate capital reserve fund for the building, or we can look at.
I mean, if we have a greater reserve than hopefully the percentage.
Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
What is our current? What is your, no.
About 30 million. I know.
We're back up. We're on the other
I
side now. Now. Different story than, yeah, years ago. Any other questions, or we can open it up to the public? Not seeing anybody in person. Is there anybody online? Great. I will bring it back to any final thoughts or a motion to adopt this resolution.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
And what we would do with the excess reserves would be a decision that's made at the time by the board later.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, but I have a question, because just, and it's not directly related, but just along these lines is, and I think I know the answer, but net metering in general, when CPUC sets those rules, the customers of the CCA are subject to the same, and the CCA itself are subject to the same net metering rules, or no?
Yes, and we historically have been able to offer a little bit more. I mean, we have the choice to offer more. I think that will be something we'll have to evaluate in the cost of service rate under Prop 26 requirements, because one of the kind of litmus tests is that you can't benefit one customer more, you can't benefit a customer more than what they're paying in to the rates. So like one customer class can receive a benefit others, and so I don't know the answer if we can continue. But we offer a penny higher right now, which isn't a lot, but we do have the ability to offer more than what the CPC.
So the investment back in the community, I know RCEA has been doing efficiency programs. There could be some general battery and some solar deployed as well that customers can benefit from. So they would reduce their demands from us and also save money.
Yeah. Those are, I mean, those are types of programs that we can offer, yes.
Okay.
Your questions, folks? Anything else? Any other thoughts? Or a motion? Okay. Somebody reading.
I'll move that we adopt a resolution 2025 TAC 1, adopting a Redwood Coast Energy Authority reserve policy and direct staff to draft a dividend program proposal. It's not in there, but I saw that it would be taken to the CAC for input, which I would like to add to the motion. So it's a very good.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Director Royo, a second by Director Ramos. We shall do a vote. All in favor, aye. Aye. All right, motion carries unanimously. Folks, all right, and that will take us to item 11, which is our executive director's report. First one.
The first one,
So excited.
yeah, so I started on the 6th of this month, so it's, I received just the absolute warmest welcome from the staff. It's been so much fun to get started. I'm so grateful for all of their work and especially admin support. So we've had an all-staff meeting. We came back here and everyone was together in the same building, which was really fun. And we had the directors each report on all of their significant accomplishments from last year. So I know that you all have been hearing about it at the board meetings, but just so much to be proud of. It was really a joy and pleasure to just hear, especially in a transition year, you know, how much work has happened, how much programs have been installed, how many grants have been received. It's pretty impressive. So that was great fun. We've already had a CAC meeting and now we're at the board. So it's been a busy couple of weeks already. But one other thing I'm working through is I am doing one-on-one interviews with all of the staff members. So that's also been really fun to get started on those. And then along those same lines, I will be reaching out with Lori's help to set up one-on-one meetings with each of you. to get a better idea of just, you know, how you like to be communicated with and, what I can do as a director to support you. So, be expecting emails from Lori on that. And since we're talking about, kind of board items, the other item you will be seeing from Lori is we're gonna be doing photos. Board headshots. So you have a photo opportunity next month. We'll be looking to schedule some before the board meeting and we'll take a small break. Because we do still need the sun to be out to get these headshots done. So just please, you know, respond to Lori when she's looking to set those up. This is to go on our website, which just received quite the refresh. And so that was one of the big accomplishments is the new website has been launched, but right now there's no headshots for anybody. So we've done it for staff and we'll be adding your headshots as well. But that's definitely an accomplishment to see that website, you know, change to be. Yeah, bring the top with this best. And then let's see what else we have. The rural fire station solar plus storage RFQ is live right now. I know you all have heard about that at past meetings. This is you know, solar plus storage at 6 remote fire stations in the county. And the RFQ deadline is February 14th at 4:30. This RFQ is a mandatory part of the process and is step 1. We'll have a qualified list before they can submit an RFP. And then there's a non-mandatory informational meeting that'll be January 24th from 8 to 10. So just if you know folks interested in that. Let's see, also for any new directors and alternates, we do director orientation. We know for Chile, we've already done his, but we'll be reaching out to set one-on-one time meetings for each new board member. And then also I'm gonna set up like 3 different time slots for alternates. I know not all alternates want to come to the full orientation, but if they have an interest, we do want to make that available and there's quite a few new alternates. I think we'll just set 3 times and they can sign up for what works best for them. Happy to accommodate if one of those times is insufficient. So we'll be reaching out on that as well. One of the things that's in our board manual and something for all of you to think about is that we can also do that same orientation with any staff members you would like us to include. So if you have folks from your jurisdictions that would like to participate or you think would be good to kind of get a better understanding of how RCEA works, you know, they're more than welcome to join as well. So just let us know if there's folks who want to have us reach out to include in those kind of orientations. And then let's see, we do have our finance committee standing committee meeting. That's February 6th at 4:30. You'll certainly, for those of you who just joined, you'll get, you know, updates about that. And I did want to share just, you know, it's been a big week at the federal level. And, you know, so we are tracking and beginning to track all the many executive orders that have come out this week. We know they're out there. It's kind of a slug to get through them. Lots of, you know, different listservs we're on, and RCEA is, you know, will be of help to us as we get through all of these. You know, we are not panicking just yet. We need to know what they mean. We do know on one case specifically the terrorist program, based on the executive order, which is unleashing American energy, that project will be delayed by 90 days before we can see any funding. We're really hopeful that it's just a pause where, you know, it really looks like, you know, this is something that still will go forward in the funding, but right at the moment, basically the direction is don't send any money out of these departments. So we know that one is immediately impacting, but hopefully it's just a 90-day pause and we'll be right back on track. And, you know, as time goes on and we get a better feeling for the other impacts, we'll certainly be reporting on those. So it's just a little too fresh to have great information today. But just know that it is absolutely on our radar and we are engaged. So with that, I have just one last item, and I'm actually just going to turn it over to the speaker for this one.
Thank you. We have this certificate of appreciation for Eileen, who really, I was actually thinking this is also my last meeting as chair, and it's the first one that I've had a new executive director. There was not an executive director technically by title the whole time I was chair, but Eileen, you led us just through the storm and have done such an amazing job and just been such a great constant presence. So I will read this out to you, but this is a certificate of appreciation presented to Eileen Verbeck. The Redwood Coast Energy Authority Board of Directors appointed Eileen Verbeck to serve as RCEA's interim executive director in April 2024. Over the ensuing months, Eileen's quick grasp of the fast-changing energy landscape and extensive government administrative experience helped her sustain her existing deputy role and add new responsibilities to steer RCEA on a steady course through turbulent regulatory waters, fiscal challenges, and energy market risks. Among other accomplishments, Eileen led RCEA efforts to partner with tribes on unprecedented regional resilience projects, navigate accelerated interest in regional offshore wind, re-envision a state-level energy efficiency program, support RCEA's electric vehicle charging network expansion, bring resilient energy systems to outline firefighting facilities, and solidified team capacities to meet RCEA's growing needs. Board of Directors and staff of RCEA hereby thank Eileen Burbeck for her exceptional service as interim executive director and her strong leadership during this transition time. So thank you so much, Eileen.
Thank you, Eileen.
And I mean, all that, right, and that was very like brain stuff that you, and the skills that you bring. You really brought a lot of heart to it, and you, I feel like really supported us through some really difficult times. And that was hard, and I just really appreciate that.
I thank you, I appreciate the recognition and I couldn't go without saying that. I couldn't have done any of those things without an amazing team, and I feel like my role is to be a support for the team that actually got all of that work done. So thank you.
Yes, and we're, maybe you get a little more relaxation out and to move back if you're not doing it all.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right. Any other yes, please. Any other accolades for Eileen? Or other things.
This was another thing. I echo all of that about Eileen. It's been fantastic, but I did want to add that since you mentioned this is your last meeting in the role of chair. Thank you so much. You've been a great chair.
Yeah.
You've also steered us through an interesting time, in collaboration with Eileen, and I really appreciate your frank and direct way of running a meeting and just getting to the point and helping everybody be heard. It's a nice balance of thoughtfulness and efficiency. So I appreciate that.
All right, well, that will take us to item 12, which is future agenda items. Do we have any of those? Not seeing any. Oh, no, was that on hand? Okay. And with that, I was gonna say, yes, thank you for letting me be your chair for the last year. It's been a wonderful experience. I appreciate you all, and especially just the folks that I got to work with very closely on our executive director recruitment, and through all those tumultuous times, it was really a good team to work with, and I appreciate each and every one of you. So thank you guys, and we are adjourned, and our next meeting is February 27th here at 3:30 p.m.